Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Mike, and I'm back for another response to the midweek chat. So hello to James Sinclair and everybody else who's participating. And this week's topic, let's see, the first one is about celebrities. Do we follow them? Do we care about their personal lives, etc., etc.? Well, I have to agree with what everyone else has said about the modern day paparazzi culture, following people around, constantly snapping their photographs, and you know, gossip shows like Entertainment Tonight, which talk about every endless detail of their sometimes completely uninteresting lives. And yeah, I get very tired of that, and I try to ignore it as much as possible. A lot of these people, I have no idea who they are or why they're famous. I have no idea who Lindsay Lohan is, what she's done, what she hasn't done, what she's supposed to do. I have no idea. I just hear this woman's name all the time about terrible things that are happening to her. And quite frankly, as a human being, as one human being to another, I actually feel bad about these people and the bad times they're going through. And I would hope that whoever she is and whatever's going wrong with her, she would someday get herself out of it. I feel the same way about Charlie Sheen. I've never been a huge fan of Charlie Sheen as an actor, although he's been in some pretty good movies. I don't like the TV show he was in. I tried to watch it a few times and I thought it was just really offensive. So I just kind of lost interest in him over the years. But what he seems to be going through in this day and age with all of his breakdowns and all that, it's pretty sad. I don't take joy in watching somebody deconstruct, especially when they're doing it in public. And it's been happening a lot over decades of the world of Hollywood, and it's a very sad thing to watch. So I hope that people like Charlie Sheen, Britney Spears, and all these other people who are constantly being hounded by the press would find some kind of peace and a way to get their lives under control. I hope that happens to them. I will admit that when it's an actor or actress or a musician that I care about and an item of gossip comes along, I'll listen. I care about what's happening to the people that I like to watch in films and all that. And the other part of it is, I have to admit that when it comes to actors and actresses and directors from the golden age, I read a lot of biographies and autobiographies of people that I like, movie stars and all that. I admit I'm really a fanboy for all these people, and I've read biographies of people like Robert Mitchum and John Cassavetes, and several books about Betty Davis and Judy Garland and all these old time movie stars, and it's not just from a gossip standpoint. I find that if I know something about these people's lives during the time when their career is starting out and reaching its peak and then going into its eventual decline, sometimes a big comeback, I find that it enhances my experience of them as performers, singers, actors, musicians, whatever. It's interesting to me to find out what is going on, or what was going on during certain times when they were making films that I love to watch over and over again, and to find out how they were getting along with in their lives and the people they were working with, their relationships to the directors and all that sort of thing. I just find that fascinating, and I always have. So I continue to listen to the clock tick, the Grey 1951 experience, as David Caney put it. Anyway, so getting distracted here. Yeah, I do. I read a lot of biographies and of people I like, including people in the rock music world, like Bob Dylan. Went through a Bob Dylan obsession a while ago. I was buying a lot of his old music on vinyl, and I was also picking up CDs, as many as I could find. And I read a good biography of him, and just kind of went through this phase, and then I kind of lost interest. But yeah, I like to read about, I've read about Neil Young, read a lot of books about Janis Joplin, and I'm fascinated by Fleetwood Mac. So one thing I do, when I spend a lot of time on YouTube, and I mean way too much time on YouTube, looking up old interviews that people have done throughout the decades, talking about their careers and their films and their music and all that sort of thing. And they inevitably they get into their personal relationships. And I have to admit that I find it fascinating. I just, yeah, probably way too much. So, and James, you brought up something about Angelina Jolie, and when she went public about her mastectomy. Now, first let me say that I'm embarrassed to say this. I have never seen Angelina Jolie in a film. Okay, I know nothing about her as an actress. I know her as a beautiful face, a really beautiful woman on the arms of Brad Pitt. And I've listened to her speak sometimes in interviews and things like that. And I've read things about her, but other than that, I don't really have a strong opinion about her. I think that she's probably about as stable as anybody gets in Hollywood, and that's not necessarily a compliment. She seems to be a fairly decent human being. I don't know. But this thing about her mastectomy, first of all, being as famous as she is, there's no way in the world she could hide something like that. It would have been found out anyway and reported. So for her to come forward and take charge of that entire experience and talk about it herself, I thought was a very brave and a very intelligent thing to do. Plus the fact that I think that she probably helped a lot of women who are facing that same incredibly difficult decision. So I think that was a good thing for her to do. And when celebrities can use things in their personal life to actually help people. For example, the way Patty Duke, and there's probably a lot of you who don't remember who Patty Duke is, but she was a legendary child star and Academy Award winner at the age of 16, went on to have a very famous hit TV show in the 60s, and she's still working today in her late 60s. And she went through a very difficult time in her early 20s. She was exhibiting a lot of very bizarre behavior, and a lot of people thought she was on drugs or she was drunk. It turned out, she found out many, many years later when she was in her mid-30s that she was manic depressive. So instead of keeping that private, she wrote a book about her life, and she talked about all of her experiences. She finally had an answer for what made her do that bizarre behavior, do all those weird things and make those bad decisions. And she did it not only as a way of explaining herself to the public, but also as a way to help other people. So she's become kind of a spokesperson for the manic depressive or bipolar disorder, and she's done a lot to help people. So in that way, I guess I kind of find the private lives of celebrities to at times be very interesting and very important. Okay, now then the second part, the second topic is about, this is the one I suggested, films we'd like to see get the Criterion Collection treatment. Okay, I have a few here, and the first one I was going to bring up is a film that I only found out a few days ago is about to be released by the Criterion Collection, so I'm very happy to find that out. The film is called Seconds. Okay, it's a film came out in 1966, starring Rock Hudson in a very different kind of role for him, directed by John Frankenheimer. And this is kind of a science fiction futuristic theme. It's about a man played by actor John Randolph, a very good character actor, about a man named Arthur Hamilton, who is a very rich businessman, lives a very sedate suburban life with a woman he's been married to a long time, and he's miserable. And he finds a way, he finds this organization that for a lot of money will give him a brand new life, give him a brand new identity. They will give him surgery, they will give him physical conditioning, they will dye his hair, they will stage the death of the original person, and they will give him a completely new home and a new life. And he thinks that that's what he wants. So he goes through this process, and he comes through the surgery transformed into Rock Hudson. And this new man, who's named Tony Wilson, has to go to another location and assume an identity and a life that he thought he wanted, and then he finds out that everything has become a nightmare. And it's just a fascinating movie. And one of the best things about it is the cinematography, black and white, by James Wong Howe. And this is a very good film. I'm glad they're finally releasing this on Criterion Collection. And I guess they're going to have a lot of extra features, featurettes and all that sort of things, interviews. This disc already has a commentary by John Frankenheimer, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Very good news. Another film that I would love to see get released by the Criterion Collection is this film. It's called A Raisin in the Sun. Released in 1961. This was based on a play by Lorraine Hansberry, and it stars Sidney Poitier, Claudia McNeil, Ruby Dee, and Diana Sands. And it's about a family in Chicago living in public housing, struggling to make ends meet, and they have a chance to take a different direction in life because the father of the family, who was married to Claudia McNeil, has passed away, and there is an insurance check coming to the family, coming to her, an insurance check for $10,000, and they're all anticipating what's going to happen to their lives, what could happen to their lives, what dreams could be fulfilled with this money. Of course, everybody has a different idea. And so the mother, who of course is in charge of making all these decisions, she decides to buy a house for the family. And the house she decides to buy is in an all-white neighborhood in Chicago. So the dream that she has for the family is filled up with more more conflicts and more confusion. And the son of the family, played by Sidney Poitier, wants to use the money to start a business because he hates his dead-end job as a chauffeur, and he wants to do something else. He wants to really, step up and be able to provide for his wife and his little boy. And it's a fascinating movie, well written, extremely well acted. Claudia McNeil is really the center of the film, although I remember reading somewhere that when they went from the play to the film, Sidney Poitier would only agree to be in the film if they tried to give his role, the role of the son, a little more of a centralized role. And he is very, very good in the film. All the people are. Claudia McNeil is such a strong, powerful actress with an amazing voice and a sensitivity and a vulnerability that would just break your heart. It would be wonderful if this film would get, just a real first-class treatment. I think it's very deserving of that. Okay, it's a very much an American story, and yeah, okay. I picked a film noir that I like very much from 1955. It's called The Big Combo, and this is who directed this film. I can't remember. I think it was directed by, hang on a second, Joseph H. Lewis, and it stars Cornel Wilde, Richard Conte, Brian Dunleavy, Gene Wallace, who at the time was married to Cornel Wilde, and also Earl Holliman and Lee Van Cleef. And it has a terrific musical jazz score by David Raxon. And this is one of really the most violent and one of the darkest of all film noirs ever made. And it would be wonderful if this would get a really terrific treatment with a lot of essays. Everybody in this film is obsessed with something or someone. It's a very tense movie. Not only is it dark in its theme, but it's dark in the way it looks, because I think every scene in the film takes place at night. Photography is just beautiful, and everything is bleak and dark and shadowy, and yeah, it's just an amazing film, and I would love to see this get first-class treatment. Okay. Now then, for horror movies, this is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. This is The Innocents. Okay, from 1961. It's an English film. It stars Deborah Kerr, and it also has Sir Michael Redgrave, Peter Wyngarde, and a couple of really amazing child actors of the period, Martin Stevens and Pamela Franklin. And this is based on a short story by Henry James called The Turn of the Screw. Okay, it was first I believe it was first adapted for the stage and given the name The Innocents, and then it was made into a film. And the director of the film is also the producer, Jack Clayton. And one of the adapters for the screenplay was Truman Capote. Now, this is one of the, again, beautiful black and white cinematography. Really one of the most beautiful, in the sense of just to look at it, gothic horror films ever made. With it takes place in the English countryside of this gigantic manor house with beautiful gardens and lakes around it, and they make fantastic use of the atmosphere. But the story is very creepy. The book is very creepy itself. Deborah Kerr plays a governess who is a very repressed woman. She's the daughter of a minister who is coming to this house to take care of two small children. And when she gets into this atmosphere, she just starts to be very affected by the romanticism of the place. And she finds herself getting more and more interested in the story of what happened to the governess who preceded her, who died a very tragic and very sudden death, and also of the caretaker of the house, a man who apparently was involved in a relationship with this woman, which seemed to be very abusive, and also had a lot of influence on the two children, who are just beautiful, innocent children. And she finds herself wondering more and more about what the influence was that he had on these two children. And she begins to hear things and to see things. She sees specters that nobody else sees. and the tension mounts and mounts, and it all ends very tragically. But it has a very strong kind of a psychosexual theme. This woman is very sexually repressed, and that's where a lot of her visions and her emotions are coming from. That repression. Very strong stuff. I saw it in the theater when I was 10 years old, and of course, at 10 years old you can't pick up on all that stuff. But even then, I could feel that there was something very, very dramatic and very kind of perverse about this movie, but it was still wonderful. So I would love to see this get some kind of a first-class treatment. I think it's very deserving. And finally, a couple of other films. I think I've talked about these before. Here we go. Michelangelo Antonioni's Blow Up. I would love to see this get a Criterion release. Also, a couple of films by David Lynch. One of my favorites, Mulholland Drive. There's almost nothing on this disc at all. For those of you who have this, it doesn't even have scene selection. I guess David Lynch didn't want that. He wanted you to just watch the film all the way through instead of picking and choosing. But I would think after all these years, it would be nice if we could get a lot of commentary and featurettes and essays, because all these people are still alive, and I would love to hear the actors and maybe even David Lynch himself talk about how this was done and why he decided to film the story in exactly the way he did. I just think this is a fascinating movie. And finally, okay, I've talked about this before too, I think, but Eraserhead, right? Wow, what a great movie. Again, this is kind of a bare bones release. I forget. I think there's well, it does have some extras, but I would like to see a lot more. This is one of the weirdest and strangest films ever made. And oh, by the way, I am going to see this movie tonight at a local theater. It's being shown in a 35mm print tonight, this Saturday at 10 o'clock. So I'll be leaving pretty soon to see Eraserhead on the big screen. Haven't seen it on the big screen since I think sometime in the 1980s, and I'm really excited about that. So anyway, those are my choices for Criterion Collection possibilities, and thank you for listening, and I'd love to hear your comments and ideas, and have a good Saturday. Good night.